The massive alien ship appeared above Earth without warning on a Tuesday morning. It was bigger than any city, its dark metal surface gleaming in the sunlight. People around the world stopped what they were doing and stared at the sky. Admiral Minho Park stood in the control room of the International Space Station, watching the enormous vessel through the windows. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. This was the moment humanity had wondered about for centuries. They were no longer alone. The alien ship sent a message in perfect English. The voice was deep and cold, like metal scraping against stone. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Military Coalition. We have been watching your planet. You have grown strong enough to join us. Minho adjusted his uniform and walked to the communication panel. As Earth's top military commander, this job fell to him. This is Admiral Park of Earth Defense Command. We welcome contact with your people. A smaller ship broke away from the main vessel and docked with the space station. The airlock hissed open, and 3 beings walked through. They were tall, almost 8 feet high, with gray skin and 4 arms each. Their eyes were large and black, and they moved with mechanical precision. The leader stepped forward. I am Commander Vexstar of the Xanthari Empire. We control 7 star systems and command the finest military forces in this sector of the galaxy. Minho bowed slightly. Welcome to our station, Commander. I am Admiral Park. We are honored by your visit. Vexstar looked around the space station with obvious disapproval. Your technology is primitive, but acceptable for a new species. We have reviewed your planet's military history through your broadcasts and data networks. The alien commander pulled out a device that projected images in the air. Pictures of Earth's wars flashed by, soldiers in trenches, tanks rolling across deserts, jets flying through clouds. Your people fight like animals, Vexstar said with what sounded like amusement. You use crude weapons and savage tactics. You fight in mud and hide behind rocks. This is not how civilized beings conduct warfare. Minho felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. Our military has served us well, Commander. We have survived many conflicts. Survived, yes, but barely. Vexstar waved his hand, and the images changed to show alien technology. Massive ships with weapons that could destroy mountains. Soldiers in armor that made them look like walking tanks. This is how real warfare is conducted. With superior technology and organized formations. Another alien stepped forward. This one was smaller but wore more decorations on its uniform. I am General Korthwin. We fight the Void Reapers, machines that want to destroy all organic life. In the galaxy, we need soldiers for our war effort. Minho leaned forward. What kind of soldiers? Simple infantry. Guard duty. Supply line protection. Nothing that requires real military skill. Vexstar's voice carried clear contempt. Your primitive weapons and tactics make you suitable only for basic tasks. The Admiral felt anger rising, but pushed it down. Perhaps you would like to see our special forces in action before making that decision. Vexstar's large eyes seemed to gleam with amusement. Your special forces? Yes, we have heard of these. Small units that crawl through dirt and attack from shadows. Very entertaining. 3 days later, Captain G1 Kim stood in the demonstration area that had been quickly built on the space station. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her eyes held the sharp focus of a predator. Behind her stood 12 of Earth's best special forces operators. The alien delegation had grown to include officers from 6 different species. They sat in chairs that had been specially made for their various body types, all watching with expressions that ranged from boredom to mild curiosity. General Taeyun Lee, Earth's Special Operations Commander, stood beside Admiral Park. Captain, Kim will demonstrate close-quarters combat, followed by tactical scenarios. Yuan bowed to the aliens, then turned to her team. Without a word, they began moving through combat drills. They moved like water, flowing from one position to another, their weapons appearing and disappearing with practiced ease. The aliens watched as the humans demonstrated knife fighting, hand-to-hand combat, and silent movement techniques. One human. would sneak up on another so quietly that even the aliens with their advanced hearing could not detect the approach. Interesting acrobatics, commented an alien with blue skin and 6 eyes. But when would you use such primitive methods? Our soldiers have energy shields and plasma weapons. Jiwan looked directly at the alien. What happens when your technology fails? What happens when you cannot use your big weapons? The aliens looked at each other and made sounds that might have been laughter. Our technology does not fail. We have moved beyond such crude necessities. The demonstration continued. The humans showed urban warfare tactics, using the station's corridors like a city environment. They moved through ventilation shafts, climbed walls, and appeared from impossible angles. They fight like insects, observed another alien. Crawling through small spaces, hiding in shadows. Where is the honor in such methods? Commander Vexstar stood up. Enough, we have seen what your people can do. It is adequate for primitive beings. But real warfare requires discipline, technology, and proper formation fighting. He activated his projection device again. Watch this. The image showed a battle between coalition forces and the Void Reapers. Massive alien ships moved in perfect formation, firing bright energy beams that lit up space like lightning. The alien soldiers advanced in neat rows, their weapons blazing. This is civilized warfare, Vexstar announced proudly. Order, discipline, overwhelming firepower applied with precision. Admiral Park studied the images carefully. Your formations are very organized. But what happens if the enemy does not fight the way you expect? The enemy always fights the way we expect, replied General Korthwin. There are rules to warfare, proper tactics. The Void Reapers are machines, but even they follow logical patterns. Captain Jiwan stepped forward. With respect, sir, in our experience, the enemy never does what you expect. That is why we train to adapt. The aliens made their laughing sounds again. Adapt? Child, we have been fighting wars for 1,000 years. We know what works. Over the next hour, the aliens explained their offer. Earth would join the coalition as a junior partner. Human forces would be used for guard duty, supply protection, and other support roles. They would be kept far from the real fighting. Your people are brave, Vexstar admitted. But bravery without proper technology and training is just another word for foolishness. You will learn from us. In time, perhaps your descendants will be worthy of real combat roles. Admiral Park looked at General Lee, then at Captain Kim. He could see the frustration in their eyes, but also something else. Determination. We accept your offer, Commander, Park said finally. But I think you may be surprised by what our people can accomplish. Surprised? By humans crawling through dirt and hiding in shadows? Vexstar's voice carried clear amusement. I think not, Admiral, but you will have your chance to prove me wrong. As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Ziwan approached Admiral Park. Sir, they have no idea what they are dealing with. Park nodded. No, Captain, they do not, but they will learn. The alien ships departed the next day, leaving behind communication equipment and supply shipments. Within a week, the first human battalions were being transported to coalition worlds. None of the aliens noticed the small smile on Admiral Park's face as he watched the ships leave. They thought they knew what humans were capable of. They understood Earth's military. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 6 months had passed since the first human soldiers arrived at coalition military bases across the galaxy. Lieutenant Sunho Choi stood guard at the main gate of Forward Base Centauri, watching alien supply trucks roll past him in the morning. The base was huge. Built on a desert planet called Zarian Prime, massive energy shields protected it from sandstorms and enemy attacks. Inside the shields, thousands of alien soldiers trained and prepared for war against the Void Reapers. Sunho adjusted his rifle and checked his watch. Another boring day of guard duty. As a Navy SEAL, he had trained for the most dangerous missions. On Earth, now he spent his days checking identification cards and directing traffic. Another exciting day in paradise, muttered Corporal Minji Song as she walked up to his position. She was carrying a communication device that buzzed constantly with routine messages. "At least the weather is nice," Sunho replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. The desert sun was already blazing hot, and it was still early morning. Minji laughed. "Nice if you enjoy feeling like you are inside an oven. I still cannot believe they stationed us here instead of letting us fight." A group of Zenthari soldiers marched past the gate in perfect formation. They were impressive beings, 8 feet tall with armor that gleamed like mirrors. Their weapons hummed with energy that could cut through steel. The Zenthari commander, Captain Zethmar, barely glanced at the human guards as he passed. To him, they were just part of the furniture, no more important than the gate itself. "Have you heard anything about the big operation they are planning?" Minji asked quietly. Sunho shook his head. "They do not tell us anything important. We are just the help, remember?" Inside the base command center, Major Hyeri Nam was having the same frustration. As an intelligence officer, she had been assigned to assist with data analysis. But the aliens only gave her simple tasks like organizing supply reports. She sat at a small desk in the corner of the room, watching the alien officers plan their next assault on a Void Reaper stronghold. The holographic display showed a fortress world called Kethmarin, covered in dark metal structures and defensive weapons. "The attack will be simple," announced Jevjo Vorthkan, the base commander. "We bring in 3 fleets with maximum firepower. We destroy their shields with concentrated bombardment. Then we land troops and take the fortress." The other alien officers nodded in agreement. It was the same strategy they always used. Overwhelming force applied directly to the target. Hyeri studied the fortress layout on her smaller screen. She could see problems with the plan, but nobody had asked for her opinion. The fortress had multiple shield layers and defensive positions that would make a direct assault very costly. "Excuse me, sir," she said. Raising her hand slightly, General Vorthkan looked at her with surprise, as if he had forgotten humans were in the room. "Yes, what is it?" "I noticed the fortress has several weak points that might be vulnerable to a smaller infiltration force. If we could disable the shield generators from inside ... The alien officers made their laughing sounds. "Human, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but warfare is not about sneaking around like thieves. It is about showing strength and honor." "But, sir, if we could save lives by using different tactics?" "Enough," the general's voice was final. "Your people will remain on guard duty here while real soldiers handle the fighting." "That is an order." Hyeri sat back down, her face burning with embarrassment and anger. Around the room, other aliens continued planning their assault as if she had never spoken. Later that day, Lieutenant Sunho was called to the recreation area. Staff Sergeant Jinho Park was there, cleaning his sniper rifle with careful precision. The weapon was a custom-built piece that could hit targets from over a mile away. "How are you holding up?" Jinhono asked without looking up from his rifle. "About as well as you would expect. You?" Jinho shrugged. "I spend my days counting supply boxes and pretending to be impressed by alien technology. Yesterday I watched a Zenthari soldier miss a target from 50 meters with a plasma rifle." "Seriously?" "Dead." "Serious. Their weapons are powerful, but they rely too much on technology. They do not practice basic marksmanship because they think their computers will do all the work." Sunho sat down beside him. "Have you noticed anything else about how they fight?" "Everything. They always attack in straight lines. They never use cover properly. They announce their movements with radio chatter that anyone could intercept. And they have never heard of flanking maneuvers. What about their intelligence gathering?" "Terrible. They use satellites and sensors, but they never send scouts ahead. They would rather trust a computer than put eyes on the target." The two soldiers sat quietly for a moment, both thinking the same thing. The aliens were technologically advanced, but their tactics were predictable and rigid. That evening, the human soldiers gathered in their quarters for their daily briefing. Lieutenant Colonel Seokshin Yoon stood at the front of the room, looking tired and frustrated. "I know this is not what any of us expected when we signed up for galactic warfare," he began. "But we need to stay ready and keep learning." "Sergeant." Soyang Kang raised her hand. Sir, are we ever going to see actual combat? Or are we just going to guard gates for the next 5 years? That depends on how the war goes, Seogjin replied. The aliens are planning a major assault on Kethmoran. Next month, if it succeeds, great. If it fails, he did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood. If the aliens failed badly enough, they might finally be desperate enough to listen to human suggestions. Captain Don Ho-im, the unit's demolitions expert, spoke up. Sir, I have been studying their fortress defenses. There are ways to bring down those shields without a direct assault, but it would require precision explosives placed in specific locations. Have you shared this with the alien command? Dongho laughed bitterly. I tried. They told me that real soldiers do not sneak around planting bombs. They said it was dishonorable. Honor does not win wars, muttered Minji. Results do. Over the following weeks, the human soldiers watched as the aliens prepared for Operation Stellar Hammer. 3 massive fleets assembled in orbit. Carrying enough firepower to destroy small moons, the alien soldiers were confident, almost arrogant. They spoke constantly about their superior technology and their inevitable victory. Some of them made jokes about the primitive humans who would miss all the real action. Sun Ho found himself assigned to communications duty during the operation. He would monitor radio traffic from the safety of the base while the real soldiers went to fight. At least you get to listen in, Minji told him. I'm stuck counting medical supplies. This is wrong, Sun Ho said quietly. We should be out there with them. We could help. Help with what? They have energy shields, plasma cannons, and ships that can travel faster than light. What could we possibly offer them? Sun Ho looked out the window at the alien training grounds, where soldiers practiced the same rigid formations they had used for centuries. Experience, flexibility, the ability to think when plans go wrong. You think their plan will go wrong? I think their plan assumes the enemy will cooperate. And in my experience, the enemy never cooperates. The night before the assault, Major Hyeri managed to access more detailed intelligence about the Kethmoran fortress. What she found made her stomach drop. The Void Reapers had been studying coalition tactics for months. They had positioned their defenses specifically to counter direct assaults. The aliens were flying straight into a trap, and they had no idea. She tried one more time to warn General Vorthcan, but he dismissed her concerns without even looking at her data. Human, your caution does you credit, but it is misplaced. We have overwhelming superiority in numbers and firepower. The machines cannot stand against us. As the alien fleets prepared to depart, Sun Ho stood at his communication post, listening to the confident chatter of alien pilots and commanders. They sounded like they were going to a celebration rather than a battle. He thought about his SAL training, about the instructors who had taught him that no plan survives contact with the enemy. He thought about the importance of having backup plans and backup plans for the backup plans. The aliens had one plan: attack directly with maximum force. If it worked, they would win quickly. If it failed, Sun Ho adjusted his headset and prepared to monitor the battle. Something told him it was going to be a very long day. The fleets jumped to hyperspace, carrying their crews toward what they believed would be an easy victory. None of them noticed the concerned expressions on the faces of the human soldiers they left behind. The humans had seen this kind of confidence before in their own military history. It usually ended badly. All they could do now was wait and listen and hope they were wrong about what was coming. Lieutenant Colonel Seokjin Yoon stood in the human command post, watching 3 green dots move across the star map toward Kethmoran. Each dot represented a coalition fleet with enough firepower to level continents. Fleet Alpha entering the target system now, reported Minji from her communication station. Her voice was steady, but Seokjin could see the tension in her shoulders. The alien commanders had allowed humans to monitor the battle, but only as observers. They wanted witnesses to their great victory, not participants. All fleets report ready for assault, came the voice of Admiral Crexton over the speakers. Beginning bombardment sequence in 60 seconds. Seokjin looked around the command post. Sunho was at the main communications console, his headset crackling with alien chatter. Major Hayeri sat at a data analysis station, her screen showing tactical information that no alien had bothered to look at. "Sir," Hayeri said quietly, "I am still seeing problems with their approach vector. The fortress has overlapping shield zones that will concentrate their fire." "Have you tried to contact the fleet?" "Yes, sir. They said they have everything under control." The first explosions appeared on the tactical display as bright flashes. The coalition fleets had opened fire with their main guns, sending streams of energy toward the fortress world. "Direct hits on the outer shields," announced an alien tactical officer. "Shields holding at 90%. Seokjin frowned. After 5 minutes of concentrated bombardment from 3 fleets, the shields had only dropped 10%. At this rate, it would take hours to break through. "Fleet Beta, increase firing rate," ordered Admiral Crexton. "Fleet Gamma, target the northern shield generators." More explosions filled the display. The fortress began firing back with massive defensive weapons that sent purple beams across space. The coalition ships twisted and turned, trying to avoid the incoming fire. "Fleet Alpha reports hull damage to the battleship Mighty Fist," Minji reported. "They are falling back to regroup." "What?" Seokjin looked at the display with surprise. "Already?" On the screen, one of the green dots was moving away from the fortress. Red warning lights flashed around it, indicating serious damage. "The fortress." "Shields are at 85% and holding," added Hayeri. "But sir, look at this." She pointed to her screen, which showed energy readings from the battle. "The fortress is not just defending, it is learning. Each time our ships attack from the same angle, the defensive fire gets more accurate." Sunho turned around from his station. "Sir, I am hearing panic in the fleet communications. They were not expecting this level of resistance." The battle continued for another hour. The coalition ships hammered the fortress with everything they had, but the shields refused to break. Meanwhile, the fortress weapons were becoming more deadly with each passing minute. "Fleet Beta has lost 2 destroyers," Minji announced. "Fleet Gamma is reporting critical damage to their flagship." Lieutenant Colonel Seokjin watched in growing horror as the green dots on the map began to flicker and disappear. Each dot represented thousands of alien soldiers and crew members. "Sir," Hayeri said urgently, "the fortress just launched fighters. Hundreds of them." Small red dots swarmed out from the fortress like angry bees. They moved in perfect formation, converging on the coalition fleets with mechanical precision. "Those are not piloted fighters," observed Captain Donghoem, who had been quietly watching the battle. "They are drones." Pure eye, the drone swarm hit the coalition fleets like a storm. The alien ships, designed for long-range bombardment, were not equipped for close-range dogfighting. Their heavy weapons could not track the small, fast-moving targets. "Fleet Alpha is requesting immediate withdrawal," came Admiral Crexton's voice, now strained with desperation. "We are taking heavy casualties." "Fleet Beta concurs," added another voice. "The fortress defenses are too strong. We need to retreat and regroup." But it was too late. The Void Reaper drones had surrounded the fleets, cutting off their escape routes. The alien ships found themselves trapped in a deadly maze of crossfire. "Fleet Beta flagship is down," Minji reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "I count at least 15 ships destroyed or disabled." Seokjin closed his eyes for a moment. He had seen disasters before, but never anything on this scale. 3 entire fleets were being torn apart, and there was nothing anyone could do to help them. "Sir," Sunho said suddenly, "I am getting emergency communications from individual ships. They are abandoning the assault formation and trying to escape on their own." The tactical display showed chaos. The neat green formations had dissolved into scattered dots fleeing in all directions. Some made it to the edge of the system and jumped to hyperspace. Others were caught by pursuing drones and destroyed. "Final casualty report coming in," Hayeri announced after another hour of monitoring. 63 ships lost, including 2 battleships and 4 heavy cruisers. Estimated crew losses are over 40,000. The command post fell silent. 40,000 soldiers dead or missing. The coalition's most powerful fleets had been shattered by a single fortress. 3 hours later, Commander Vextar arrived at the human command post. The proud alien warrior looked older somehow, his gray skin pale with exhaustion. "Admiral Park," he said quietly, "we need to speak." Admiral Minho Park, who had arrived during the battle, gestured to a private conference room. "Of course, Commander." The 2 leaders sat across from each other at a small table. Through the window, they could see alien survivors being brought back to base on medical transports. "Your people monitored the entire battle," Vextar said. It was not a question. "Yes. We saw everything." "Then you know we failed completely. The fortress is stronger than ever, and we have lost 3 of our best fleets." The alien commander's voice was hollow with defeat. Admiral Park leaned forward. "Commander, with respect, this did not have to happen." Our intelligence officer identified the problems with your attack plan before you launched. "You think your people could have done better?" "I think our people could have done differently. And sometimes different is better than stronger." Vextar was quiet for a long moment, staring at his 4 hands folded on the table. "What would your people have done?" "We would have gathered more intelligence first. We would have looked for weaknesses in the fortress design. We would have used smaller teams to disable key systems before launching a major assault." "Sneaking around again," Vextar said, but there was no mockery in his voice this time. "Winning," Admiral Park corrected. "We call it winning." The alien commander looked up, his large black eyes meeting the Admiral's gaze. "Your Lieutenant Colonel Yoon has been requesting permission to study the fortress in detail. I denied that request because I thought it was unnecessary. And now? Now I am wondering if we have been fighting this war the wrong way from the beginning." Vextar stood up slowly. "I am authorizing your people to conduct a full tactical analysis of Kethmoran. If you can find a way to destroy that fortress, we will listen." Admiral Park felt a small surge of hope. "Thank you, Commander. You will not regret this decision." "I already regret many decisions," Vextar replied sadly. "Adding one more will not matter." After the alien commander left, Admiral Park returned to the command post. The human officers were still at their stations, processing data from the failed assault. "Listen up, everyone," he announced. "We just got our first real assignment. Command wants us to find a way to crack Kethmoran." Lieutenant Colonel Seogjin looked up from a tactical report. "Sir, with respect, 3 fleets could not even scratch that fortress. What can we do that they could not? We can think differently. We can use our heads instead of just our weapons." Admiral Park smiled grimly. "And we can prove that sometimes the best way to win a fight is not to fight it the way your enemy expects." Major Hyeri raised her hand. "Sir, I have been studying the fortress layout. There might be a way in, but it would require a very small team in perfect timing." "How small?" "Maybe 12 people. Special forces only. And they would have to get inside without being detected." Around the room, the human officers began to smile. This was the kind of mission they had trained for their entire careers. "Start planning," Admiral Park ordered. "And remember, we only get one chance at this. If we fail, the coalition loses this war." But as he looked at the determined faces around him, Admiral Park felt confident they would not fail. The aliens had tried to win with overwhelming force and superior technology. Now, it was time to show them how humans won wars. Lieutenant Sunho Choi stood in the briefing room, looking at the holographic display of Kethmoran Fortress. The massive structure looked like a metal mountain, covered in weapon towers and shield generators. "This is suicide," muttered Staff Sergeant Junho Park, adjusting his sniper rifle scope. "That fortress has more guns than some planets." "Every suicide mission looks impossible until someone does it," replied Captain Don Hoheim, studying the fortress blueprints. "The question is how we get inside without being turned into space dust." Major Hyeri Nam pointed to a section of the display. "Here, the fortress has cooling systems that draw water from underground rivers. The intake pipes are too small for Ships, but big enough for people, Sunho nodded slowly. Underwater insertion, how deep? 50 meters down, then a 2-kilometer swim through complete darkness. Sergeant Soyeon Kong looked up from her medical equipment. What about breathing? Apparatus, and what happens if we get lost in those pipes? We improvise, Sunho said simply. It is what we do best. Admiral Park entered the room with Commander Vexstar and several alien officers. The aliens looked uncomfortable, like they were attending their own funeral. Gentlemen, ladies, Admiral Park began, you have 48 hours to plan and execute this mission. The entire coalition fleet is counting on you. Commander Vexstar stepped forward. I must ask again, are you certain 12 humans can accomplish what 3 fleets could not? No, sir, Sunho replied honestly. But we are certain that doing the same thing over and over will not work. So we are going to try something different. The alien commander's large eyes studied the human team. They looked so small compared to his own warriors. What equipment do you need? Less than you think, answered Captain Dongho. We have studied your captured Void Reaper technology. We can make what we need from spare parts and human ingenuity. Over the next 24 hours, the human team prepared for their mission. They modified alien breathing equipment for underwater use. They created silent weapons from salvaged materials. They studied every detail of the fortress layout until they could navigate it blindfolded. Corporal Minji Song worked on communication devices that could penetrate the fortress shielding. I can give you short-range contact with each other, but communicating with the fleet will be impossible until you disable the jammers. How will they know when to attack? Asked Lieutenant Colonel Seokjin Yoon. Sunho smiled grimly. When the fortress shields go down, they will know. The alien officers watched the preparations with growing amazement. The humans took apart advanced technology and rebuilt it using simple tools and creative thinking. They work like mechanics. Not soldiers, observed General Korthwin. The best soldiers are mechanics, replied Admiral Park. They fix problems. On the day of the mission, the human team gathered in the hangar bay. Their modified transport ship looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels. It was covered in additional armor and sensor-blocking material. Remember the plan? Sunho told his team. We go in quiet, we stay quiet, and we get out quiet. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. What if we run into heavy resistance? Asked Junho. Then we adapt. That is what separates us from machines. The transport ship launched from the base, heading toward Kethmorin at minimum power. To enemy sensors, it would look like space debris or a damaged escape pod dot in the alien command center. Dozens of officers watched the mission through long-range sensors. Commander Vexstar stood beside Admiral Park, both men staring at the display. That showed a tiny dot moving toward the massive fortress. I still cannot believe you are attempting this, Vexstar said quietly. Neither can I, admitted Admiral Park. But my people have a saying, fortune favors the bold, and if they fail, then we find another way. We always find another way. The transport ship reached the edge of the Kethmorin system and went completely dark. From this point on, the mission would proceed in total communication silence. Sunho piloted the ship toward the planet's surface. Using gravity and momentum instead of engines, the fortress sensors registered nothing as the small vessel glided through space like a falling rock. Approaching the water, he whispered to his team. Everyone ready? 11 voices confirmed their readiness. They had trained for this moment, but training and reality were different things. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere and plunged toward the dark ocean. At the last moment, Sunho fired the engines briefly, slowing their descent enough to survive impact. The ship hit the water with tremendous force, then sank rapidly toward the ocean floor. Through the windows, they could see the massive fortress rising from the water like a mechanical island. Breathing gear on, ordered Sunho. First team, you are with me. Second team follows in 5 minutes. The ship's airlock opened and 6 humans swam out into the cold, dark water. Their modified equipment worked perfectly. Recycling their air and keeping them warm, finding the intake pipes took 30 minutes of careful searching. The openings were hidden among artificial coral that disguised them from orbital observation. "This is it," Sun-Ho said through his underwater communicator. "From here we swim blind for 2 kilometers." The pipes were exactly as Major Hyeri had predicted, large enough for humans but too small for vehicles. The water current was strong, pulling them deeper into the fortress. Swimming through complete darkness tested every bit of their training. They stayed together by following guide ropes and counting their strokes. When Jinho began to panic in the confined space, Soyeon calmed him with steady breathing exercises. After what felt like hours, they saw light ahead. The pipes opened into a water treatment facility deep inside the fortress. Sun-Ho surfaced first, checking for guards or sensors. "Clear," he whispered. "Everyone up?" One by one, the team emerged from the water like ghosts. They were inside the most heavily defended structure in the galaxy, and no one knew they were there. "Phase 1 complete," Sun-Ho said quietly. "Now we find those shield generators." The second team arrived 20 minutes later, led by Captain Dong-Ho. They carried the explosives needed to destroy the fortress power systems. "Any problems with the swim?" Sun-Ho asked. "Apart from nearly drowning twice, no problems at all," replied Dong-Ho with a grin. The 2 teams split up according to plan. Sun-Ho's group would disable the shield generators. Dong-Ho's group would plant charges on the power core, moving through. The fortress corridors was like navigating a mechanical maze. The walls were covered in alien writing and pulsing lights. Security cameras swept back and forth in predictable patterns. "Patrol coming," whispered Minji, monitoring her detection. Equipment. The team pressed against the walls, using shadows and alcoves to remain invisible. 3 Void Reaper machines walked past, their metal feet clanging on the floor. The machines were humanoid, but clearly artificial. Red sensors glowed where eyes should be, and their movements had the precise coordination of computers. "They move in patterns," observed Junho. "Same route, same timing." "Machines like predictability," replied Sun-Ho. "We can use that." They reached the first shield generator after 2 hours of careful movement. The massive device hummed with energy, protected by automated defenses. "I need 15 minutes to place the charges," said Dong-Ho. "You have got 10, replied Sun-Ho. "After that, someone is going to notice the guards are missing." Behind them, Sergeant Soyeon was tending to 2 unconscious Void Reaper sentries. Her medical training had taught her exactly where to strike mechanical opponents to shut them down. Without triggering alarms, the charges were placed with surgical precision. Each explosive was designed to create maximum damage with minimum noise. When they detonated, the shield generators would fail catastrophically. "Charges set," reported Dong-Ho, moving to the power core. Meanwhile, Junho had found a perfect sniper position overlooking the fortress command center. From his hiding place in the ventilation system, he could see Void Reaper commanders coordinating their defenses. "Target acquired," he whispered into his communicator. "I count 6 command units and 12 guards. Wait for my signal," replied Sun-Ho. "We all go together or we do not go at all." The teams moved through the fortress like hunting cats, silent and deadly. Every step was calculated, every movement planned. They avoided patrols, disabled security systems, and placed their explosives with perfect precision. In the alien command center, Commander Vexstar watched the clock. "How long have they been inside?" 4 hours, replied Admiral Park. "Right on schedule. You actually think they can succeed?" "I think they already have. We just have not seen the results yet." Inside the fortress, Sun-Ho reached the final shield generator. The massive device was heavily guarded, with patrol routes that overlapped every 30 seconds. "This is the hard part," he told his team. "Once we start, we have 5 minutes before every alarm in the fortress goes off." Minji checked her timer. "All teams report ready?" "Execute," ordered Sun-Ho. 12 humans moved with practiced precision. Charges detonated in sequence, each explosion carefully timed to maximize damage. Shield generators failed one by one, their protective fields flickering and dying. In space above the fortress, the Coalition fleet detected the failing shields immediately. Shields down 40% and falling, reported the fleet tactical officer. Whatever they are doing, it is working. Commander Vexstar looked at Admiral Park with something approaching awe. Your people are actually doing it. Never doubt a human with a mission, Park replied. We are very stubborn that way. Inside the fortress, alarms began blaring as the Void Reapers realized they were under attack from within, but it was too late. The human teams had already completed their primary objectives and were moving toward the extraction point. The fortress shields collapsed completely, leaving the massive structure defenseless for the first time in years. Above them, the Coalition fleet opened fire with everything they had. The fortress shook like an earthquake as Coalition ships poured fire through the collapsed shields. Sun Ho felt the floor vibrate under his feet as massive explosions rocked the structure above them. Time to leave, he shouted over the noise. Everyone to the extraction point now. The human teams moved quickly through corridors filled with emergency lights and blaring alarms. Void Reaper machines ran in all directions, trying to coordinate a defense against the orbital bombardment. Left turn ahead, called Minji, checking her map display, then straight for 200 meters. A group of Reaper soldiers appeared around the corner, their red sensors scanning for intruders. Jun-Ho, moving ahead of the team, had already seen them coming. His sniper rifle made almost no sound as it fired. 3 precise shots dropped the machines before they could raise an alarm. He was the best marksman in the team, and at these ranges, he never missed. Clear, he whispered into his communicator. Captain Dong-Ho's team caught up with them at the next intersection. His face was covered in grease and metal dust from crawling through machinery spaces, but he was grinning. Power core is set to overload in 15 minutes, he reported. When it goes, this whole place is going to light up like a star. Then we better not be here when it happens, replied Sun Ho. They reached the water treatment facility just as the first Coalition troops began landing on the fortress surface. Through the facility windows, they could see alien shuttles descending through the smoking ruins of the defensive towers. Look at that, said Soyang, pointing outside. They are actually winning, where the fortress shields had once deflected. Every attack, now Coalition weapons carved through armor and structures like they were made of paper. The Void Reapers had built their defenses around the assumption that the shields would never fail. Into the water, ordered Sun Ho. Same formation as before. One by one, the team slipped back into the dark intake pipes. The swim out was easier than the swim in, with the current carrying them toward the ocean exit. Behind them, the fortress power core reached critical overload. The explosion was visible from orbit, a bright flash that lit up the entire planet for several seconds. When the light faded, Kethmoran Fortress was gone. In its place was a smoking crater that glowed with residual energy. 3 hours later, Sun Ho and his team stood on the deck of the Coalition flagship Eternal Victory. They were still dripping wet from their escape swim, but they were alive and successful. Commander Vexstar approached them with an expression that mixed amazement with respect. Behind him walked a dozen other alien commanders, all staring at the small group of humans. Lieutenant Choi, Vexstar said formally, I owe you an apology. No, sir, you do not. Yes, I do. I called your people primitive. I said you fought like animals. I was wrong. The alien commander's voice carried genuine humility. What you accomplished today was the finest military operation I have ever witnessed. Admiral Park joined the group on the observation deck. Through the windows, they could see the ruins of Kethmoran below, still smoking from the massive explosion. Casualty report? Park asked. 12 Coalition ships damaged, 43 crew members wounded. No deaths, replied the fleet tactical officer. It is the most successful assault in Coalition history. And the fortress? Completely destroyed. We estimate it would have taken 3 months of conventional assault to achieve the same result, with casualties in the hundreds of thousands. The alien officers looked at each other with expressions of wonder. A fortress that had seemed impossible to defeat had fallen to 12 humans in less than 6 hours. How? Asked General Corthwin. How did you know it would work? Sun Ho exchanged glances with his team. Because we did not try to fight the fortress the way it expected to be fought. We found its weakness and exploited it. But the risks you took ... swimming through unknown pipes, moving through a hostile facility with no backup, placing explosives by hand. Every mission has risks, interrupted Captain Jiwon Kim, who had arrived with the second wave of ships. The key is making sure the risks are worth taking. Over the following days, word of the human victory spread throughout coalition space. Military academies that had dismissed human tactics as primitive began requesting human instructors. Captain Jiwon found herself assigned to train the first mixed-species Special Operations Unit. Her students included Xanthari warriors, crystalline beings from the Outer Rim, and gas creatures from the Nebula worlds. The first lesson, she told her diverse class, is to forget everything you think you know about warfare. Technology is a tool, not a solution. Intelligence is a weapon, not just information. And sometimes the best way to win is to make your enemy fight your fight instead of his. A Xanthari officer raised one of his forearms. But how do we learn to think like humans? You do not, Jiwon replied. You learn to think like yourselves, but differently. Humans do not have special fighting genes, we just learn to adapt. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Seok-jin was working with Coalition Strategic Command to develop new tactical doctrines. The rigid formation fighting that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries was being replaced by flexible, adaptive strategies. The key insight, he explained to a room full of alien generals, is that no enemy will cooperate with your battle plan, so you need multiple plans and the ability to change them quickly. But how do we maintain unit coordination without strict formations? Asked one general. Training, communication, trust, and accepting that sometimes the person closest to the problem should make the decision, regardless of rank. The aliens found this concept revolutionary. In their military culture, orders flowed down from high command in rigid chains. The idea that a sergeant might override a general's orders based on field conditions was almost unthinkable, but the results spoke for themselves. Human-trained units began achieving victory ratios that seemed impossible by traditional standards. 3. Months after Kefmoran, Major Hyeri stood before the Coalition High Council, delivering a briefing on Void Reaper capabilities. The machines are adapting to our new tactics, she reported. They are studying human strategies and developing countermeasures. What do you recommend? Asked Council Leader Vorthal. We adapt faster than they do. We develop new tactics before. They can analyze the old ones. We become unpredictable. And how do we become unpredictable? Hyeri smiled. We do what humans have always done. We improvise. The council chamber, filled with representatives from dozens of alien species, murmured with approval. These beings who had once dismissed humanity as primitive now hung on every word from human military advisors. Admiral Park was promoted to Coalition Supreme Strategic Command, making him the first human to hold such a high position. His first order was to establish human special operations training centers on 12 worlds. Every coalition soldier will learn basic human tactics, he announced. Flexibility, adaptation, and creative problem-solving are now standard requirements. General Taeyun Lee, who had come from Earth to oversee the training programs, found himself in the unique position of teaching alien warriors how to think like humans. The hardest part, he confided to Admiral Park, is convincing them that it is acceptable to fail. Their cultures emphasize perfection and honor. Ours emphasizes learning from mistakes. Keep working on it, Park replied. Failure is the best teacher, but only if you survive to learn from it. 6 months after the fortress fell, Sun Ho stood in the same briefing room where his impossible mission had begun. But now the room was filled with alien officers eager to learn human tactics. Today we will discuss infiltration techniques, he began. The key is to think like your enemy's security system. What does it expect? What does it ignore? What assumptions? Is it making? A young Xanthari officer raised her hand. Lieutenant Colonel Choi, what if the enemy has no weaknesses? Sun Ho smiled, remembering when he had been asked the same question during his own training years ago on Earth. Every system Has weaknesses, he replied. The trick is finding them before the enemy realizes they exist. And sometimes the weakness is not in the system itself, but in the people who designed it. As he looked around the room at the eager faces of alien students, Sun Ho reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, these same beings had laughed at human military techniques. Now they were taking notes on everything he said. The war against the Void Reapers was far from over, but the balance had shifted dramatically. The machines had evolved to fight against predictable, technology-dependent enemies. They were not prepared for opponents who could think, adapt, and improvise. They were not prepared for humans. 1 year after the fall of Kathmoran, Colonel Sun Ho Choi stood on the bridge of the Coalition stealth ship Silent Hunter, watching his mixed-species team prepare for their latest mission. The ship itself was a testament to how much had changed. Built using human stealth principles combined with alien technology, it was invisible to most sensors and could infiltrate enemy space undetected. "Target in sight," reported Lieutenant Caxler, a Zenthari warrior who had graduated from Jiwan's Special Operations Program. His forearms moved efficiently over the control panels, applying techniques that would have been impossible a year ago. "What do you see?" asked Sun Ho. "Void Reaper command ship, heavily defended." "But sir, there is something strange about their formation." "They are trying to copy human tactics," Sun Ho smiled grimly. "The machines are learning. Good. It means we are winning." At the navigation station, Ensign Prilvin, a crystalline being from the outer rim, manipulated the ship's course with mathematical precision. Her species thought in geometric patterns, making them excellent at calculating stealth approaches. "Approach vector computed," she announced in her musical voice. "We can reach the target using the debris field for cover." "Just like humans taught us," added Sergeant Morgesh, a gas creature whose natural ability to change shape made him perfect for infiltration work. "Use the environment to hide your movements." The bridge crew worked with seamless coordination, each species contributing their natural abilities while applying human tactical principles. It was exactly what Admiral Park had envisioned when he created the Integrated Special Forces program on Earth. Admiral Park himself was meeting with the Coalition High Council via holographic communication. The council chamber displayed representatives from 47 different worlds, all connected by real-time communication links. "The war situation has improved dramatically," Park reported. "Void Reaper territorial gains have stopped completely. In some sectors we are pushing them back." Council leader Vorthal leaned forward with interest. "What has changed?" "Everything. Our forces no longer fight the way the machines expect. We use unpredictable tactics, flexible formations, and adaptive strategies. The Reapers are struggling to counter our new approach. And human casualties? Lower than any previous period in the war. When you fight smarter, you do not need to fight harder." The council members exchanged glances that spoke volumes. These alien leaders had once dismissed humanity as a minor species suitable only for support roles. Now they depended on human strategic thinking to save their civilization. Back on the Silent Hunter, Sun Ho's team was implementing another impossible mission. Their target was a Void Reaper command ship that controlled an entire sector of enemy forces. "Remember," Sun Ho told his diverse team, "the machines are expecting us now. They have studied our previous missions and adapted their defenses." "So what do we do differently?" asked Caxter. "We think one step ahead of their thinking. They expect stealth insertion, so we give them something else entirely." The plan was audacious even by human standards. Instead of sneaking aboard the enemy ship, they would surrender to it. "Surrender?" Prilvin's crystalline form shimmered with confusion. "That seems counterproductive." "The best disguise is the one nobody suspects," explained Sun Ho. "Void Reapers capture prisoners for interrogation. Once we are inside there, holding cells, we become invisible." It took 6 hours to make their fake surrender look convincing. The Silent Hunter transmitted distress signals and allowed itself to be captured by Reaper patrol ships. When the boarding party of mechanical soldiers searched their vessel, they found exactly what they expected, a damaged Coalition ship with A crew ready to surrender, the Reapers transported the prisoners to the command ship, placing them in holding cells deep within the vessel's security section. The machines never suspected that the prisoners wanted to be there. "Phase 1 complete," whispered Sunho into a communicator disguised as a medical implant. "Beginning infiltration." What happened next would have been impossible without the diverse skills of his team. Morgesh liquefied his gaseous form and flowed through the cell ventilation system to disable security monitors. Prilvin used her crystalline structure to create precise cutting tools from her own body. Caxthor applied his warrior training to silently eliminate guards. Meanwhile, on the planet Zerium Prime, Major Hyeri Nam was briefing a new class of alien intelligence officers. Her students included members of 17 different species, all learning human approaches to information gathering. "Intelligence is not just about collecting data," she explained. "It is about understanding what the data means and how to use it." A reptilian officer from the Swamp Worlds raised a clawed hand. "But surely advanced sensors can gather better information than biological observation?" "Sometimes. But sensors can be fooled. They see what they are programmed to see. A trained observer sees what is actually there." She activated a holographic display showing surveillance footage from a recent mission. "Watch this Void Reaper patrol." "What do you see?" 12 units moving in standard formation," replied the reptilian. "Look closer. Unit 7 is slightly out of step. Unit 3 pauses fractionally longer at intersections. Unit 12's weapon angle is wrong." The class studied the footage more carefully, beginning to see the subtle details they had missed. "Those 3 units are not Reapers," Hyeri revealed. "They are human infiltrators wearing captured armor. A computer would miss those tiny variations, but a trained eye catches them immediately." The alien students murmured with amazement. They were learning to see warfare through human perspectives, finding details that their technology missed. Back on the Reaper command ship, Sunho's team had reached the Central Command Core. The massive chamber pulsed with mechanical intelligence, coordinating attacks across dozens of star systems. "Charges placed," reported Caxthor, using demolition techniques learned from human instructors. "The explosion will disable their coordination network for 6 months. "Neurovirus uploaded," added Prilvin, whose mathematical mind had proven excellent at computer infiltration. "Their tactical algorithms will start making random errors." "Psychological warfare protocols activated," said Morgesh, who had corrupted the ship's communication systems. "They will receive false reports that make them paranoid and suspicious." The team extracted using the same impossible method they had used to enter. They walked out disguised as maintenance robots. The Reapers, focused on external threats, never noticed the mechanical figures moving through their own corridors. The command ship's destruction had immediate effects across Reaper space. Without central coordination, their attacks became disorganized and ineffective. Units that should have supported each other instead fought independent battles they could not win. 3 months later, Captain Jiwon Kim stood before the largest military academy in Coalition space, addressing an audience of senior officers from across the galaxy. "Today marks the graduation of our 1,000th Mixed Species Special Operations Unit," she announced. "These teams represent the future of Coalition military capability." The graduation ceremony was unlike anything in galactic history. Human techniques had been adapted by dozens of different species, each adding their own unique capabilities to the basic framework. Xanthari warriors had learned stealth despite their large size. Crystalline beings had mastered explosive techniques using their natural chemistry. Gas creatures had become experts at infiltration and reconnaissance. "The key to our success," Jiwan continued, "is not that we all fight the same way. It is that we all think the same way. We adapt, we improvise, and we never accept that something is impossible." In the audience, Commander Vexstar sat with other senior Coalition officers. The proud alien warrior who had once mocked human tactics now wore a medal given to him by human forces for his support of the integration program. "Hard to believe it has only been 2 years since first contact," he said quietly to the officer beside him. Hard to believe we survived this long without them, came the reply. As the ceremony concluded, a priority message arrived from the front lines. The Void Reapers were requesting negotiations for the first time in galactic history. The machines, designed to achieve total victory through superior technology, had encountered something they could not compute, opponents who refused to be predictable. Admiral Park read the message in his headquarters on Earth, surrounded by staff officers from 12 different worlds. The humans worked alongside aliens who had once considered them primitive, now valued as essential partners. They want to negotiate, Park announced. After 30 years of war, the Reapers are ready to talk. What changed their minds? Asked General Taeyun Lee. We did. We showed them that superior technology means nothing without superior thinking. We proved that adaptability beats predictability every time. The final scene of humanity's integration into galactic society took place on a neutral space station, where coalition representatives met with Void Reaper diplomatic units for the first time. The human delegation was small but significant. Sun Ho, now a general, represented special operations. Hyeri spoke for intelligence services. Jiwan handled military training concerns. Across the negotiating table sat mechanical beings that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. But now they faced opponents who fought unlike any organic species they had encountered. You do not fight as we calculated, stated the lead Reaper. Negotiator, its voice emotionless but somehow frustrated. That was the point, replied Sun Ho simply. We cannot predict your tactics. Our models fail consistently when applied to human-trained forces. Prediction requires patterns. We work very hard not to be predictable. The negotiations continued for weeks, but the outcome was inevitable. The Reapers, facing opponents they could not analyze or counter, agreed to territorial boundaries and peaceful coexistence. For the first time in galactic history, organic life had not just survived a war with artificial intelligence. It had won. As the peace treaty was signed, Admiral Park reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 2 years ago, humanity had been dismissed as primitive and suitable only for support roles. Now human tactical doctrine was taught in military academies across 47 worlds. Human officers commanded integrated fleets. Human thinking had revolutionized galactic warfare. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Superior technology was no match for superior adaptability. And the universe had discovered that when humans said something was impossible, they usually meant it was just difficult. The war was over. The real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning. But with humans involved, even the impossible seemed achievable.